Welcome to another Timeless Education group meeting. Today I figured we would talk about spiral dynamics and levels of consciousness. Ever since I looked into ancient systems, I've been interested in this idea of levels. Let's see if I can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are like the 7 classical planets that I figured out refers to various types of awareness. So the lighter something is, like the sun is the lightest, is like the highest level, the most awareness. And then the further away the planets are, like Saturn is like was the most remote in ancient times that they could spot with the eye. Today, later on, we discovered more planets and things like that. But the reason why the sun and the moon are included is because these are like analogies that are not meant to be taken literally and things like that. Then of course I try to translate this into this model that I simply refers to levels of consciousness. Sometimes I refer to it as an evaluation compass, but I've started to use the 10 timeless parameters as an evaluation compass lately, because I haven't really been satisfied with these 7 levels. What happened with Christian? Are you there, Christian? So yeah, I mean, when using this, I've tried to both look into what the levels might refer to in various ancient texts, where you can sort of try to make out, including stuff like the 7 churches in Revelations, the book of Revelations and things like that. But it's all very difficult to like make sense of. And I also don't like to stick too close to like dogma or things that have been established in the past, because I always figure that human incompetence is timeless, and there's always been mistakes. I think there's always room for improvement, unless you really can verify that this is like spotless in some sense. And I've been looking at when I've received like comments from people, and I've tried to organize them because I've noticed that they are often very similar. And so I have wanted to like see if I can like arrange them into something like levels, and perhaps even fit them into these levels. But the levels would then need some kind of modification. But in general, I figured that you would have something like, well, the highest level would be this kind of timeless consciousness, where you can rise above whatever is occurring as something that is like temporary, that that things are always changing, and that you are simply aware and like detached, and that you have an amount of self-control and all that stuff. And then the second level would be like the path towards that, figuring out which teachings and things leads to that, and perhaps train yourself a little bit, like sacrifice. And these are things that I have sort of noticed that certain descriptions tend to point to in certain levels in ancient texts. And then level 3 would then be like this disillusion consciousness. This is when you're like purified from the world. Oh yeah, I made a correlation with like the 3 baptisms of Christianity, for example. Baptism of water, baptism of spirit, which is like air or correlates with air, and then baptism of fire is like correlates with the intellect or with the awareness and consciousness. And then below those 3 like higher levels, you have like the basic levels of like the intellect, the emotions, and the sensory motor levels. And I suppose this can come across as a bit hierarchical. And because of that, I've been thinking that perhaps you can do something where you have where certain levels have like a negative side and a positive side. Like you can realize something on each level. so that you can, instead of spotting like where you are in one of these levels, you can sort of see what you have realized in each level, like what each level, if we think of each level as serving a function. And that's part of why I became a little bit interested in spiral dynamics, because spiral dynamics, when Ken Wilber started to introduce his ideas, he came up with this idea of transcend and include, that when you rise a level, you should also include the level below it and things like that. However, I'm not really sure how that works, or if it works, because I haven't found any good examples of that. So perhaps we should try to go into spiral dynamics and make that like the main topics for today. And both of you seem to be very interested in spiral dynamics and know perhaps, or probably more than I do about this. But I figured I would at least just start here reading on Wikipedia how they describe it. Spiral dynamics is a model of evolutionary development of individuals, organizations, and societies. It was initially developed by Don Edward Beck and Christopher Cowan, based on the emergent cyclical theory of Claire W. Graves, combined with memetics as proposed by Richard Dawkins, and further developed. A later collaboration between Beck and Ken Wilber produced Spiral Dynamics Integral. Several variations of spiral dynamics continue to exist, both independently and incorporated into or drawing on Wilber's integral theory. In addition to influencing both integral theory and metamodernism, spiral dynamics is noted for its applications in management theory and business ethics, and as an example of applied memetics. Yeah, it doesn't really say anything here about spiritual development. It mainly talks about management theory and business ethics. And I think that, I guess, the spiritual community has sort of hijacked this a little bit and tried to make it more spiritual than perhaps it was intended to be. So if we look at the overview here, spiral dynamics describes how value systems and worldviews emerge from the interaction of life conditions and the mind's capacities. The emphasis on life conditions is essential to the progression through value systems. The emphasis on life conditions as essential to the progression through value systems is unusual among similar theories, and leads to the view that no level is inherently positive or negative. And that's kind of interesting, because what it sounds like here, but rather is a response to the local environment. Through these value systems, groups and cultures structure their societies and individuals integrate within them. Each distinct set of values is developed as a response to solving the problems of the previous system. Changes between states may occur incrementally, first order change, or in a sudden breakthrough, second order change. The value systems develop in a specific order, and the most important question when considering the value system being expressed in a particular behavior is why the behavior occurs. So it sounds a little bit like it's a theory of how, like a theory of history and like cultural development. So indeed, it doesn't really say that much about levels, and thus I don't think it really correlates with like what they were trying to do in like ancient spiritual teachings by designing hierarchies or levels of awareness. But here it has to do with, yeah, basically change, like just various stages of change where no level is better or worse than the others. Do you guys want to say something? Do you guys?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, because it seems like it's I feel like they do say that it's when you look at each stage, it's not a positive or negative thing because of like just the way it develops. But like I feel like when you look at the stages and you see how they develop, it seems like there is somewhat kind of like a hierarchy in them. Like one is better than the other. Like it is better, for example, to have like be in sort of like a turquoise or yellow stage than it is to be in like a red or blue stage maybe. Or like when you even look at basic beige stage survival, it seems better to be at like stage orange or green rather than beige, for example. Like I feel like you can definitely see that in the stages.
Yeah. Also, I'm not sure if like the way in which better is being defined, it's better as in an objective, observable, evolutionary pattern of the collective of humanity, or as at a personal value level, because I think that like timeless education focuses more, I guess, on improving your own life as a result of increasing your, I guess, your level of awareness of the world, whereas the other one seems to be more the the spiral dynamic seems more to be to is kind of like like it was constructed upon observing how the external like societies have um changed over time, perhaps. So it's more focused on the external than on the internal.
Yeah, it seems very much like they have based it on like Western countries or like the development of like Western civilization. Um, and it,
I'm not sure though because like I'm pretty sure they focus on the entire world, I guess, in this case, because they don't just look at the Western countries, but they're trying to look at the entire globe, I guess, the global scale of how humanity itself has developed over time or changed over time, which they say is through the main thing I've seen that the main thing that leads to this change and stuff seems to be like an interest in our human existence, and that this sort of desire to understand why we exist and why we're here is what then leads to a different worldview, a different change, and all this kind of stuff. Because um, through like trying to explore and discover how the world works, I guess eventually then a system comes to be made, or some kind of theory or belief or values start to arise, which then can make living amongst each other easier, make our lives easier. But then eventually it becomes something that doesn't work or something that needs to change. So then a new system is then brought up by somebody, and then it can either be radical or it could be something very, very different from what exists now, but then like can be spread and then adopted by other people and then become like what they say is like a peak. It basically then reaches a form where it's like it's reached the point where everybody knows about it. It becomes like a dominant thing, and then if eventually then a new system comes about and it repeats the cycle and over again, and then you get different stages and stuff like that, and then yeah.
but it also sounds like it's very much based on material conditions or like what the environment is like. So I mean, you cannot simply go from hunter gatherers like the base, first level up to like level green with or level or orange with competition and industries and companies and all this stuff. Because you need, it's like it's similar to the development of human civilization as a whole. Or yeah, there's also like a comparison that you can draw with the evolution of life forms, I guess.
Yeah, so it's interesting that first, like what you were reading on Wikipedia, and as well as your condensed understanding of the system, is that there is not supposed to be an objective hierarchy, or perhaps, I guess, the conclusion that you have to arrive to according to this system is that there is no better or worse. But in some of the videos that I watch about it, I was, for example, seeing people mention Trump as an example of red. So, that kind of in of itself indicates that there is like implied hierarchy according to the like YouTubers or person's perspective, as in like, and I don't know, because I could see that easy sort of if there is like a not a very nuanced or a holistic understanding of the system, you can demonize, I guess, certain human behaviors. For example, someone that is impulsive and brash and physically aggressive, like they are. I mean, I think that part of like timeless education is, and which I think it's part of level yellow perhaps, or yellow and higher in spiral dynamics, is to understand that everyone has its own niche and role in the world, its own function in the species, and so in a way, nobody's more superior, objectively speaking, to anyone else, and it's kind of seeing red as, I don't know. I kind of feel like there is a potential for a possible demonization of, for example, red consciousness or orange. I mean,
Yeah.
green. Yeah.
But I'm wondering how much of this idea that these levels are like equal, or there is no particular value, has to do with the fact that like it's unavoidable, or like there's a component of determinism here. Like there's not like people have chosen their level, but it's a result of their circumstances. And perhaps they're thinking that some countries are at a certain stage because the environment doesn't allow them to be anywhere else at the moment. And that's why they are saying that, all of this is not, there's no stage that is better than others, because, people don't really have a choice, and they are at their levels because of necessity, and because of that component, you cannot really say that certain civilizations or certain societies are better than others, or if they still think that, if we were to go back to, some authoritarian blue stage, it wouldn't be like worse because it's just a different stage or something.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much they include the possibility that these spiders can go back, or is it always a progression? Is it like evolution, or is it like things can fall back?
Well, yeah, this is actually one of the most interesting parts about it, is that apparently you have the integration part, or the part where you incorporate it. Like you never actually leave behind the stage, but you bring I guess the positive parts of it with you. So then like someone could be at stage green or something, but then for some reason they're doing something, and all of a sudden this stage red like initiates in them or something, and like all of a sudden now they're like tapping into their like older, I guess, spiral or whatever, or their older stage. So it is like you're going back in the past in some kind of way, but like you're using it in some kind of way as like a tool or something. It's not like a main thing that governs the way you behave, I guess. Whereas like the dominant stage is the one that then dictates and governs most of what you do, I guess. Another thing I thought that was interesting though, real quick, is that when you were talking about the influence of the external and stuff like that, they were talking a lot about that in the book I was reading, and at the same time they mentioned something how humans are born with like they have a theory that basically humans are born with some kind of like software internal system for these stages, and that the external conditions is what ignites these like stages. So depending on how not only is it determined basically by the external, but also the internal is also determined, because it'll start off at this very basic level, and then there's basically an inherent software that basically it hasn't been tapped into yet because of the external conditions. Only once the external conditions reach like different levels or peaks or something like that, then the stage will be ignited, and it will lead to change and a new development in the consciousness of a person or something, which is why they think it's like it will be spiral dynamics isn't something that will end, but it will be a continuum. Basically, it will always be an open-ended thing. There will always be new external conditions that will arise, new stages and new developments and stuff, which I think is really interesting, because then when you think about turquoise, that's apparently the holistic view where you take in all spirals and stuff like that. So then it's like, well, that seems to be like the pinnacle, like the highest you could be at. So then what stage could really be higher than that? Or which I thought was interesting. But
yeah, because there is a lot about like the way they attempt to describe the higher levels, that is sort of similar to the spiritual teachings of enlightenment, and like they are the peak of spiritual development. But perhaps we should take a look at these diagrams and so that we can discuss what so can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so first we have like the survival instinct, or the lowest level, survival, instinctive, manage starvation, water, shelter, reproduction, physiological, clans without a chief, herd, like animalistic. See if there is anything archaic, dawning, self-awareness, survives through instinct, intuition, banding with others. So this sounds very much like hunter-gatherers. Yeah, here we have hunter-gatherers and then tribal settlements, and that sounds like matrism. And then warlord tribes, I guess it's early patriarchy that you can read about in like anthropology. Instinctive self, and here they make a correlation with like the age of an individual, so up to 18 months. So I guess they make a correlation with small children, infants, and not just hunter-gatherers, survival bands.
Wait,
and there is not anything particular in my levels that are like this basic.
well, it seems, I don't know, this diagram seems kind of interesting because like even I remember reading something about red stage and how there's young adults that are on the streets or something like that that have this dog eat dog mentality and to look out for yourself, and everyone's against, like, you versus the world basically. And I don't know if a person between the ages of 3 to 6 years old is thinking like that or even has that in their mind.
Well, red is the third stage,
right?
To 6 years old. This is beige, or how do you pronounce it?
Beige.
Yeah. And it's interesting here that it says also pitfalls, primitive development, psychopathologies, autism. Because autism is like, I mean, there are many various definitions and descriptions, but autism is like very much associated also with like the masculine brain, with with systemization, in contrast with empathizing. So
yeah, I don't know if that's the best diagram to
wording. Yeah, autism. I guess you could say just I will say that being I mean mentally retarded or dysfunctional is like a better wording instead of autism, because autism is just the like it's more abstract, kind of like the sapientian types, even though there is like some like delays in emotional or social development. So I don't know. I think instinctive is not the right word to describe autism. You know what I mean?
I think it's right about most of the stuff though inside the colors and stuff, like the boxes. Like I feel like the descriptions line up with what I read and stuff. It's just I don't think they needed to add the ages and all that stuff into it. Like I don't really know what they mean then by ages.
Okay, so the next step is purple, magic, and a mystic self. And this correlates with age 1 to 3 years old. So, but I don't know, like if they are implying that kids are like, but I guess they have a kind of an imagination that does not really, that is a bit naive perhaps. And I mean, in some sense, this sounds similar to what I also associate with level 3, which is pretty high, meaning that you haven't really started to form all of these delusions or assumptions and sometimes pathological defense mechanisms about the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like in level 3, from what I understand, it's kind of like it's a pseudo going back, but from a place of like you understand that it's kind of it kind of has more of like like a connection to non-attachment and receptivity and openness, as opposed to like this blissful kind of like magical thinking. I believe in Santa Claus or the
Yeah,
yeah, the fairy of the tooth fairy or things of that sort. You know, when we're like little kids and we believe in all of that. I think that's what it means.
I think when I think of like consciousness level 3, I think of what you mentioned about how like the curiosity you used to have as a kid and the openness you have sort of comes back, but you have more experience, more knowledge and stuff like that that also gets incorporated with you. So then like
yeah, it's like I have like two sides to each level, which is also based on this cyclical model. So that's except for the two higher levels. But it's interesting here that the pitfalls for the second level are borderline, narcissism, omnipotent fantasy, and animistic hallucination, tribal conflict. Like borderline and narcissism.
yeah, I haven't I haven't
Yeah.
heard about any of this stuff, so I haven't read anything
Oh,
about their
I've seen this.
pitfalls and
Yeah,
stuff.
I personally, yeah, I think I have an understanding of what purple really means, and perhaps they are associating the emotional chaos of borderline with purple, which I can understand. Kind of like, you know, superstitious, I guess, ancient shamans being, I guess, a little crazy. But if I would think narcissism and borderline in its more modern manifestations, like in young adults, especially neurotic women, that I would associate more like that with like orange, like materialistic people that sort of fill their emptiness with achievements and getting ahead in the social ladder. So I don't know if I agree with even
Yeah,
this.
because if we're talking about modern times, then there's not a lot of societies that are at this stage. So how can we like, I don't know, are they saying that there are certain people in a society, even though that society may in general be at a certain level, that there may be individuals who are as if they are living in a different society, like in a purple society or a red society.
Yeah, I actually wanted to mention something about this because they were talking a lot about third world countries and being at the stage, at a purple stage. And when I think of Malelo and his country, he talked about how people still believe in Wicca magic and believe people can like teleport and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I feel like this correlates very well with that purple stage. So I feel like when I think about the entire world, that's what they're talking about there, is that still does exist. It's just more prominent in the third world countries rather than like first world Western countries, or even probably in some Eastern countries like China and maybe Russia and stuff.
Yeah, but they don't
At
mention
least.
anything about certain individuals in a different type of society still having kind of that.
No, they don't. I haven't read anything where they mention like some individuals, and I think that's mainly because they mainly focus on the entire whole. They mainly focus on like the entire society and the whole mentality of the culture and stuff.
Yeah, because things tend to become very general when you sort of approach it like that.
Yeah, I that's where I think of it as more of like what they're doing is like sort of like they've observed, like you were talking about, so basically like an observation of history and probably how societies have developed over history, and then maybe we can then be able to acknowledge that this is a fact, that this is how our minds work, and that this is how sort of ideas and worldviews sort of get developed, and then maybe we can we'll just be like more aware of it and know that this stuff is like a normal thing, and this is how new worldviews and systems occur, all that stuff.
So the red then is compared with the impulsive self, ages 3 to 6 years, early mythic, feudal, and exploitive empire. Be what you are and do what you want, regardless. I wonder if there ever was that kind of attitude in a society.
I guess Sparta or the you could say or the early Vikings and the warrior culture is what red really means, kind of.
Yeah, but even those cultures tends to have like a very strong like honor code or honor culture. So like be what you are and do what you want regardless. Sounds, I don't know. It sounds very, I don't know, antisocial in a way. Like that wouldn't work in a society really. Heroic status, power, glory. I guess they might be referring to like do what you want like in a certain context or something, but I don't know.
It's
Align.
kind of like
Yeah,
bravado. What they
yeah,
use as.
it's just like align with power. I mean, it sounds very exidiomic when we think of like types.
But yeah,
Take
I think it's kind of interesting too how they say that was like the mentality 10,000 years ago. Like when it actually seems like something that was made that could have been more recent, like only 2,000 years ago or like 1,000 years ago. Like that was people's mentality. Like when you think of like um let me think. Like I don't know, do you think Stalin could have had something like this? Kind of mentality, or even Crusaders and stuff like that. I know Crusaders are usually linked with like blue, but I feel like when you think of like
yeah,
incorporating
like
stuff from
Genghis
the lower,
Khan and things like that.
right,
Yeah,
right, exactly. Like,
it's
Maybe even
basically patriarchal.
Napoleon.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Pitfalls, anxiety, depression, phobias, excessive guilt cannot build stable nations. I find it interesting that they associate anxiety, depression, and phobias and excessive guilt with this level. It almost makes me think of, I don't know, but
I mean, I think it gonna. I mean, the only interpretation that I could see for those pitfalls being red is kind of like what is a dominant. I mean, if red is predominant in a culture, it causes amongst everyone or people that they are at the mercy of like a red, impulsive, tyrannical leader. It might cause depression, anxiety, phobias, or excessive guilt, maybe amongst like warriors that might have to like because in this kind of like because I watch videos that associate kind of a Spartan culture and sort of like all of this warfare and warlords where there's a lot of death and suffering like amongst the people. Yeah, so it seems like a bit, and then I guess that's where because it makes me think of the arisal of like organized religion as a response to like a culture of violence in this way, and then that's more yeah.
yeah, but I wonder how, I mean, it's kind of, you can make that a logical leap how an exploitive, violent culture would need like a strong form of control or order. But how does purple lead to red? Like how does animistic?
they say that apparently it transitions between I and we kind of things. Like it's like a pendulum swing throughout the stages. So it starts off at a me, like for example with beige, it starts off at a very me, uh, all about me survival, and then once you get past that, it then changes into a we, and it comes into a tribe, clan, people orientation, and that goes back into me, all about me, getting power over the clan, and that goes back into we and getting purpose and sort of like community and stuff like that, and then it will go again into me and about success and having um, a lot of money, wealth, power, stuff like that. I would think in stage orange, and then it goes again to green with we, about community and about understanding other people and stuff like that, and then when it goes into second tier, I don't think it even goes into me, but I think, or no, actually, maybe it does, because apparently stage yellow is focused on systems and bringing in, understanding the other stages, and then having more competence and knowledge and gathering information. And then when it comes to turquoise, it's we again at a very holistic view of how the world works and how everything fits together, and basically how life and humans, I guess, interact with each other. That's like the turquoise level.
It also said something about one helix being about life conditions and the other about mind capacities. Do you know anything about that?
No, I'm not too much. Do you have more information about that?
No, not right now.
I think I heard
I just wrote it down as a bunch of notes.
Yeah, I heard something about a helix, but then what was the second thing you said again? Because that's the thing.
Mind capacities.
Yeah, mind capacities. Yeah, I don't know what's meant by that, mind capacities. I don't think I've read anything about that.
Okay.
I guess is it referring to the potential, as in, like, it's talking about the external environment and then the internal potential to, I guess the next level will arise as depending on how much awareness you have of the current predominant status or culture. So let's say if you're in like a purple stage, and for example, I like to think about this quote that you brought up of like Picasso when he was an artist, and he would think that like you could like draw anything on a board, and if you have enough good arguments or explanations for the abstractions that you draw, even if they're bullshit, and you can sort of give them as some sort of mythological boost, you can win and go ahead and fool everyone. So I guess the red kind of has like, because part of that sort of dog eat dog mentality is also like a cynicism about how you can like fool people, because in purple there is also like a naivety aspect because there is a lot of magical thinking, so you can make people believe whatever you want. Again, that I guess shift from the collective to narcissism in this more, you know what I mean? It's yeah, you read sounds a lot like,
yeah, it sounds like the I has to do with mind capacities and the we or community has to do with environment conditions.
yeah.
So it might be something like that where they are just a different way of phrasing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So then blue you have like rule and rule self, age, and this is also correlated with an age y 7 to 8.
I have no idea. That's why I don't get, like, I feel like the descriptions are fine, but when it comes to, like, do you remember ever going through any kind of stages like this or having these problems at 3 years old or 4 years old, or, you know, depression, anxiety, I don't know, wanting to have power and stuff? Like, I really don't understand why they put the ages there, but
yeah, nation states authoritarian starting 5,000 years ago. Are we sure there wasn't anything like that before that? Life has meaning, direction. I mean, this sounds like religious and purpose with predetermined outcomes, quest, ultimate peace. So this starts to go into some kind of a little bit of proto-utopian stage, like, or aim. Follow the given rules. Don't exceed your rule. Pitfalls, archetypal rule identification, script pathology, fundamentalism, fascism. And I mean, certain things like this, it's like this can coexist almost. I feel in a society that is also orange or perhaps even red. I don't know. But maybe
yeah,
not.
that's why they talk about how, like, once you go to a different stage or you move up a stage, you're always bringing some elements with you. So you never fully leave it behind, I guess. You're always bringing some aspects with you.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, in society you can have like criminals that are like red, and then you can have like certain cults or religious institutions that are still blue, even though the majority of culture is like orange, capitalistic democracies and things like that. And then there is still this question: how do you integrate these? So, like, for example, if you move them from the instinctive self, do what you must to stay alive, and then you go into purple, how do you like integrate, like include this, the
Yeah,
positive of this?
it's apparently through like, so at each stage, eventually there starts to be problems with it, which then leads to the pitfalls and stuff like that. And then there becomes like a need or a rise, I guess, for some kind of new worldview or system, which then leads to a new stage. And then what you apparently do is like, you have to first, there's like a whole process apparently to it. It's like, first you have to understand what caused the bad stuff to occur with the system. And then you have to understand what they are and then how to remove them and change them. And then you can move into a new stage, and then you incorporate all the good stuff from the old stage into the new stage, and then you leave behind everything that blocks, I guess, further development into a new stage. So it's like, it apparently it comes down to like a visionary or something like that, that they call, I think what they call them is like a spiral wizard or something. It's like they're able to see all the problems with the spiral, or not spiral, but the stage they're currently in, and then like they create some new vision or worldview or something that then becomes like the new stage, or and sets new values, beliefs, and stuff like that, and then becomes just this recurring process of that. It's basically, or a cyclical process of that. It's like um, someone comes up with some new vision or idea, gets implemented, becomes like the dominant culture, becomes routine, and then eventually it falls apart, and then a new vision comes, and then it repeats.
Yeah, but the environment must also have some kind of influence along with that.
Right, right.
Yeah, like what makes me, for example, think the way in which I kind of mapped out, like for example, from red to blue and to orange will be like red might be the most red to blue seems like the rise of honor culture. Like that's because impulsive self will kind of like need a certain higher ideal that can fuel, that striving and the aggressive, I guess, form of life. And then I guess once you start seeing camaraderie and equality amongst like your clan, I guess that's where religions start emerging. And I see, for example, the like when the West becomes dominated by the Christian Church, you can say is a transition to blue, and then after blue you have the Enlightenment period, because there was a lot of intellectual obscurantism in the medieval ages, and then there is this just explosion of like inventions and technology and idealism, but that brings us, for example, to the foundation of the United States, for example, with all of these freedom ideals. Because what I've read a lot about Orange is that freedom becomes a new ideal from all of these oppressive, like sort of slave morality norms from Christianity. Yeah, yeah, you kind of see the progression there. Yeah,
Yeah,
and how
but
the
do you know of any concrete examples of how someone going into stage orange, because I guess we are still in stage orange and we are in stage green, I guess, for the most part in Western societies. So stage orange is capitalistic democracies, and this is associated with age 9 to 14 for some reason.
I don't know. Let's just ignore those
Yeah,
like.
I'm just ignoring the age at this
Act
point.
in your own self-interest by playing the game to win. It sounds like a more refined version of like red.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. More intellectually
So
refined.
yeah, and green then is social democracies, affectionate relations, seek peace within the inner self and explore the caring dimensions of community, appreciate diverse views, listen well. I mean, these things aren't really happening. I mean, there's like an illusion of this. There's like talk of this, but in practice it is very like hypocritical because people don't appreciate diverse views and don't listen well and don't go for consensus or emphasize group needs. It's like they
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually something interesting too that they mentioned, is that people, for example, could be at stage orange, but then can borrow values and ideas from like stage green, and then they appear to be like they may appear to be like in stage green or something, but then apparently if you just start to ask them why they do what they do and you start to reveal their motives, you can find out that they're actually like at stage orange or something. So like someone may, and it makes me think of like when you talk about the levels of consciousness, when you talk about, for example, between level 2 and level 5, how people can appear to be at level 2 or can appear and stuff like that, but then really they're still at level 5 because maybe they don't really understand what they're talking about or don't really have a firm grasp of what they think they know, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. What Christian's saying before, yeah, you go in the. It's like kind of makes me think of like celebrities donating to like charities or taking all of these very left and woke views. Because green is still in first tier, so there is still attachment to certain norms and suffocating values. So it's kind of like what determines the stages as being at first tier and not in second. Like in yellow is where you will have actually non-attachment and non-dualistic thinking. Like green is kind of like attached to non-attachment in a weird way. It's kind of like it makes me just think of like hippies and new age spirituality and social justice warriors that will be all in green, basically, or orange transitioning to green. You could say because many people might adopt those views as a way of increasing their status, which is orange. So yeah.
Well, when people talk about Sweden and stuff like that, I wonder if Sweden is like a stage green kind of thing. Like Andreas, from your observations in your own country, like would you say Sweden seems something like a green stage kind of?
I mean, it is a social democracy, and it has been sort of like this. But I don't know. I mean, there's this. I mean, appreciate diverse views. That's not the. I wouldn't say that's something that happens right now. But right now, everything is sort of moving towards a crisis. So yeah, and I don't think people here necessarily listen well. I mean, maybe ordinary people do, but not when you look at like politicians and when they just go for this immature, childish rhetoric where they accuse the opposition for trying to, become authoritarian or something. Even though, instead of working together or, recognizing the problems for what they are. And I mean, we have had, we have a problem with criminality, which has gotten in through immigration. And I mean, yeah, you can, of course, blame immigration, but then you can also look at it that, there's a failure of integration. It's not that immigration is necessarily bad, but that you have to deal with it. You have to make it work by focusing on finding a good way to integrate people who come here and things like that. And then there's like the energy crisis, which is related to the environment. People wanted to close down the nuclear plants, and they have done that to make things more environmentally friendly. But now we haven't been able to find a good alternative source for that. So people are like abandoning the usual left and green parties for these more orange
Interesting.
parties as a result of things not really working. But then again, I mean, these progressive parties, the green and social democracies, who have caused a lot of unintentional problems, they have not really been. They have not. I don't think they fit green as it should be, if you understand what I mean. But it's hard to say that they are secretly orange either. I think some of them might have been, but
do you think
know.
they might fit more blue maybe, or no?
Yeah, some of them might even be a bit of that, but I mean, it's not religion. I mean, that is if you look at something like ecology and the climate crisis as a form of new religion. And I guess you can look at it in that way as well, because quest, ultimate peace, and script pathology. So I mean, yeah, if you don't associate it too much with stereotypes, you can probably even argue. But this also comes back to the idea of types. A lot of these politicians are made up of specific types that tends to have an authoritarian inclination in their like energy or personality, if you want to call it that. This
Yeah,
kind of want to rear and tell people how to behave, and looking down on ordinary people, like these farmers and these guys out in the country. They need to adapt to the new things, but they don't understand what it's like to live. You need cars and automobiles more when you live in the country, and so certain regulations and higher taxes on petrol and things like that will make the working class vote against them and things like that. Like the elites, who tends to be more progressive, they are a bit more divorced from reality because they have, more money, and they don't understand what it's like to live in the real world in the same way. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that this, just like my levels are a bit flawed, I think that these are also flawed. It's very difficult to create a very good system like this, even though it is very appealing, and I would like to experiment a bit more in trying to, yeah.
Well, another thing I think is interesting too is when you look at old spiritual teachers and gurus or revolutionaries that made like big change in society and stuff like that. It seemed like even when it comes down to individual cases, like regardless of what the main culture stage is at, it seems like some people then can rise to different stages anyways. Like for example, when you look at people like Gandhi or like Socrates or Plato and stuff like that, it seems like they could have been at higher stages than even the contemporary culture or something like that. Like even when they talk about, or even just ancient philosophers in general, when you think about the theories they came up with and the philosophies and stuff like that, they even some of them seem to uh, tap into like green stage or even a higher level thinking in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think of more spiritual levels should be something that you can apply to anything almost. Not that it shouldn't be limited to a specific thing like societies or the progression of history. In that way, it becomes also more timeless. So that, because we know that there have been people even in more primitive societies who have been highly developed, and even today in very advanced societies you have people who are not so developed. So that's more interesting to me, and I think, yeah, but that's also, yeah, I mean, these are different systems created for different purposes. But that's why I also think that it's not a very good thing to use spiral dynamics in particular in spiritual communities, or to, like, I don't know, blend that with spirituality too much.
I guess is that where it goes back to you when it comes to the usefulness of like spiral dynamics in general? Like, is it actually something that could help people understand other people or understand how societies develop and work and stuff like that? Like, is it really, because that's what it claims ultimately to be, I think, is like a model for understanding human development, how humans change over time and stuff like that. How at least the mind and its consciousness changes.
Yeah, I mean, I personally doesn't find it useful, and I still don't find it useful, except as a kind of uh, support for one's memory, in order to see how, like, have a summary of how human development has progressed in a way, like a brief overview of that. And perhaps if you need to develop your own system, you can look at some of these ideas and take them into consideration, even if I think that they need some modification and things like that. I mean, it is. I mean, it's also interesting to me, perhaps how people, if they are into this kind of stuff, how that affects their view of things, because it should, make them think like, okay, if this is green, if that is higher than orange, then what does that mean? It could work as a kind of criticism of things like consumerism, authoritarianism, and things like that. And I know that there are a lot of people who don't always agree with these levels as well. But then they would have to.
I'm kind of interested in like I.
Christian, I can't hear you anymore.
Are you there? I think you froze.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did freeze too. I think it's okay now. So.
But one thing that I want to, basically the main thing that why I wanted to talk about this subject is this idea of transcend and include. And I mean, we know about it in theory and what it's supposed to be, but do any of you, have you come across any concrete examples? Like, for example, right now, I mean, I don't know where I would put myself in this. I can see a little bit of myself in many of these. I guess I like to think of myself as being in yellow or perhaps even turquoise because of the similarity with spiritual development. Let's see, yellow, world-centric, live fully and responsibly as what you are and learn to become. Integral synthesis method, awaken maximum number of streams of evolution. Integrate diversity with discernment. I mean, this sounds like things that I talk about, that I aim for. Pitfalls, aborted self-actualization, existential angst. I mean, that sounds like something you could have regardless of level if you're like a sensitive person or things like that. Which again goes back to this idea that sometimes these levels could be, people look at certain persons and you could correlate them with like personality types a little bit. Because there are some people that are simply drawn to spirituality more than others. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because I have also struggled with this idea that trying to look at people and different types equally, that no type is worse than another. But at the same time, it is clear that certain types tend to be more drawn to improving things, and other people are more prone to accept the way things are, or perhaps even join criminal gangs and things like that. And yet I do like the idea that this idea of reciprocal maintenance and this idea of surprise, and that you need even some crazy stuff in order to enjoy life. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I want to try to emphasize a little bit in my weird teaching. Let's see, the highest one, pitfalls, pathologies of the soul. I mean, all of these things that are below it, like inauthenticity, excessive relativism, over-attachment, goal fixation, workaholism, fundamentalism. I mean, all of this stuff is already pathologies of the soul, so I don't know. I guess it's anything below it, perhaps they are referring to, or I don't know. But what I really want to, okay, do you want to say something before I?
This is what I meant by when I was looking into spiral dynamics, I could see a lot of the types coming in, and then like when I think about types too, and if they've like existed since like the beginning of humanity, then these things probably should have existed at least for the majority through all stages of human development anyways. All these desires, different types, and all this stuff. If that's the main cause, then that's where I think of the main cause of like the human development and stuff like that is like, because if you try to like bring in types into the whole thing, then like how do you even correlate with that kind of stuff or reconcile spiral dynamics with even types?
Yeah, because for example, something that I wanted to say is that like something that I immediately noticed, like what Andreas explaining, like or Andreas explaining like the political dynamics in Sweden. I was thinking that like a lot of these green ideals are kind of brought by fiducian types. Like they are the ones that I guess publish all of these books or write all of these utopias. Like Chomsky makes me think a lot of his work, yeah, makes me think of many fiducian writers. And then when politicians wants to implement these ideas, they become more tyrannical, I guess, or I guess black and white or impositive, as in kind of becomes like a religion. So
Yeah,
maybe
like they draw these higher ideas down to the level blue in a way.
yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, so I was also thinking about like how the DNA is also like a helicoid, and there are like certain like hydrogen bonds that join like one higher like uh, helicoid with another. So I was thinking maybe there's a connection between blue and green as well in that sense, as in they are kind of connected, and there's like a green gray area between them. And so that's why understanding orange well and living and experiencing orange well enough is necessary to fully integrate green and leave blue behind. So and also makes me think of inventors and all of these crazy geniuses that wanted to idealize freedom, that you can say is like a like many of them were also kind of like fiducian types, and some like like fiduciamic urbanum types that kind of are into technology and higher tech. That's why I think when orange is brought up as well. Also, yeah, so it yeah, it's like because you can't really skip one stage as kind of the other aspect about spiral dynamics. Like if you just skip orange and jump to green, you're not going to have real green, so you're going to still have. So if you demonize capitalism, that's what's going to happen basically with the yeah.
But again,
Uh,
the thing that I keep going back to is this idea of examples of how to transcend and include. So I'm wondering if you had like come across anything like a concrete example. So for example, like I said, I'm not sure. Okay, let's say that I am at yellow level, the yellow, the integral self, and perhaps you too also consider yourself on that level. Um, then how, I mean, can I be there if I have not integrated green, orange, blue, red, purple, and beige, beige. I forgot how you pronounce it.
it's
Be
beige, and
beige,
then with the yeah, and then with the top one, it's turquoise.
turquoise,
Turquoise.
Turquoise, yeah,
turquoise,
turquoise, yeah.
turquoise.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say, okay, let's say that I am yellow then. Okay. Can I be there if I have not integrated these others? Or have I integrated them without knowing that I've integrated them? And if so, how have I integrated them? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't necessarily expect you to answer, but do you have some ideas about this?
No, but I don't think I do. But those are those are really good questions. Like those are really interesting. Yeah, no, I haven't really looked into that, but those are really good questions.
I mean, like I remember when I was hearing this video about yellow, like part of like entering the stage of yellow, which is the first state, the first stage of second tier consciousness. It's like you have to like be able to talk to people where they are at their level. So there is more of this flexibility and understanding everyone as serving a certain function in the larger ecosystem or uh, macro society at the world level. So because green basically wants equality, wants I guess a union, world peace, and if you are not able to see everyone and match them or where they are at, you're going to create these elites, and these elites are going to basically corrupt this. They're basically an attachment to green values, and that's kind of what separates green from yellow. It's that yellow is not attached to enforcing a specific way of seeing the world. and you can talk to people at their level, I guess. So there's more flexibility. Like you see the downfall. Basically, you can see the pitfalls in this, I guess, idealistic, um, like, I guess, under expressed disdain for the way in which things are, which is like goes back again to seeing, like, for example, level orange as bad. Like, I don't know, but a good example of someone integrating orange successfully and moving into green could be, maybe, I mean, I don't know any, like, perfect example, but I don't know why I think about Elon Musk, in the sense that, at the end, like, you could say that his strategy is very orangish. It's like about technology and capitalism, but in the end, he wants to bring us to another place where everyone can have more. It's too utopic, too idealistic. It's just like, I don't know, fiducian. It's kind of like the type that
Well,
comes to mind when I'm agreeing. Yeah.
well, one thing I heard for an example in the book I was reading. So, one thing I noticed about the book I was reading is that it sounded very storytelling and novelty kind of, and it was, I don't know, I have my own opinions about it, but they brought up an example about an example for how someone changes, and they were talking about how someone goes from orange to green, and they mentioned how someone who's I guess only been focused on themselves and their own success and their own gain and stuff like that, they start to, I guess, see the feel the pitfalls of it, and then they start to become more open and want to be more communicative, I guess, be more helpful to society or to like the people around them, instead of being more selfish and only caring about their own success. So it's like they've gotten so much success to the point where it's like now I guess they have so much that they find more interest in other people and wanting to help others, and then wanting to be more open to other people and basically cooperate more. And that's how someone can, for example, transition from stage orange into stage green.
So it's almost a little bit like having lived out those stages.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so because if we look at these, I guess that's why they perhaps correlate them with ages as well, because most people have gone through the first stage as children, and then the magic stage. I mean, I don't know, have many people gone through, like, I guess again as children, if we believed in the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus and things like that, and read.
I don't know. I wouldn't say I ever went through a stage at that age where I was like a power hungry and wanted control over everyone around me and stuff like that.
I don't know why. I think like red, maybe metaphorically speaking, like in a way that I can apply to everyone, especially kids. It's kind of like a 5-year-old like throwing themselves on the floor and throwing a tantrum. It's like, ah, I want that kind of thing. You know, it's
Yeah, but I'm not sure I as a 5-year-old ever went out of control like that. I mean, kids are also a bit different.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I can't recall seeing any like other kids going that far at that age. But I think that I mean you can take it also depends on how much should you go through. Okay, one thing to go through a phase where you say, okay, fuck everyone else, I'll take what I need. I guess I have gone through something like that, but I have not gone through trying to align with power or heroic status or power and glory and things like that.
Yeah.
I guess except in perhaps a more subtle sense, like glory of creating a nice artwork or something. But I don't think that's what they are trying to explain here.
Yeah, no, I
I
don't
mean,
think so either.
maybe. I mean, yeah, I don't think so in the concrete level, but maybe internally you might feel a lot of intensity and passion, even if like you don't come across that way to people on the external level, that you are in this extroverted kind of asshole. Like
Well,
internally, you maybe.
when I think of like the glory and stuff they talk about, I think of it as like going down in history, like as spectacular individual or something, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're glorified and you're praised and all this kind of stuff.
But I wonder about like people like heavy metal musicians who like scream out passionately, if they manage to purify themselves, or if that counts as going through something like this stage. I don't know.
I guess the only way you would be able to tell is if they were then to move to like the blue stage or something. If like all of a sudden they were to become more let's see here, want to find direction and purpose and find some kind of truth and hold that as like absolute and then combat anything else if they were to go through some kind of stage like that, especially if I guess their quest is to seek ultimate peace or something.
I wonder if this idea of going from red to blue could explain why some Exidium types can become very sort of religious or like moralistic, in a sense that you often don't expect. But
yeah, whereas then
don't.
maybe like a more pragmatic, scientific Exidium, maybe more in the orange kind of way. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
it makes me think of like that rock star in their 20s that becomes a corporate family man when they are like at one point in their life, like they were kind of rebellious and crazy in their youth, and then they just become kind of corporate, which is kind of entering blue. And then once they are middle age or in their 40s, they decide that they want to climb up the ladder and get promotions at work. And I don't know, just like many stadiums are orange in America, for example. Like you see many of them kind of like, you think of the capitalist pig archetype kind of in orange, like where.
where would you put someone like Varg Vikernes? I mean, he is sort of animistic
I
and
would think in
magic,
Yeah,
but
I don't
purple.
purple.
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
when he
kind of
talks
like.
about reincarnation and the bear cult and all that kind of stuff, that probably be purple, and then
Yeah,
maybe some
it's like.
blue, maybe. But
Because I think that when he was a heavy metal musician and he burned down churches, he might have been red and then gone down instead of up.
That's interesting to think. I mean, if you see the bear cult as like a more complex religion, you could see. I don't know. You could see like a blend of purple and blue. So he's kind of. I don't know. He's still as red, but kind of as
well,
opposed to red, like
even when you
kind
think
of like
about
spread out.
some religious stuff too, for example, when you think of like Hinduism and even Christianity and stuff, they still continue on with this sort of imaginative like thinking that I think is sort of like magical thinking. I think of when you think of revelations or like spirits talking to you or stuff like that. I feel like still fits kind of purple, even though a lot of people say that blends well with blue, or seeing visions and stuff like that. Or if you guys agree with me, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that a downfall with this kind of hierarchy of development seems to be that perhaps purple has to be put in the right context, because out of context it might seem like they are assuming that, I guess, like these spiritual magical thinking religions have no substance or are kind of based on, oh, I want to believe in this thing, oh, I had a personal encounter with this like a special being. I don't know, like
yeah, that sounds very much to me like something like stage purple rather than something that's like blue or. But that's where they talk about incorporating and stuff like that and bringing stuff with you. So I don't know, because then like why do people bring what they do to a different stage or something? Or do they even know that they're doing that? I feel like that's even like those are good questions. Why do they even know that they're even going through different stages and that they're incorporating and leaving out certain things or anything like that?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, for example, I know that Andreas used example of the fiducian type talking about their personal encounter with Jesus. I don't know if that will, because at the same time, like you can have hippies or quacks in green, but at the same time, they might preach some like kind of outlandish, like kind
Well,
of
yeah, think about when people talk about what is that called? Dude, I lost it. It's like where they're talking to some higher being and then they're like communicating with them and like apparently the being is using them as a vehicle and then they talk through them and then they're like talking to other people. The being is using this person to like talk through to other people. I know there's a name for it. I just can't remember what it's called. It's like oh man, dude, I forgot what it's called. It's some kind of like way that a person apparently can communicate with some higher being, and then like the higher being talks through them to like a group of people.
The being a uh
There's a name for it. I can't remember the name
yeah,
of
I
it.
can't remember it either, but I know what they're talking about. It's like when Jesus like will receive messages from his father, and he will then talk those messages to people. Yeah, that kind of, I don't know. It has a name though.
Yeah, I just can't remember the name.
But putting it like down in purple seems like, I don't know, if it almost seems like a very Western centric point of view. Like I could definitely see orange people kind of talk down on people who have that magical thinking, or equate it to believing in Santa Claus, which I think are very different things to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people who talk about psychedelic trips and experiences, and it's, oh my god, yeah, I don't know. It's because you see a lot of green people as well. Like, you think of hippies and using shrooms, psychedelics, and all of that to access higher states of perception. Because it seems like green might be more about the SJWs, which are more gradum types. It's yeah, I don't know. I see some problems now with the way in which this is arranged, because it's kind of like at individual level, which is why I guess this system might be used better understood as like a macro cosm map, as opposed to a personal journey map.
So should we? Do you have anything more to say before we end
Yeah,
this
I
meeting?
actually do have a question. So
Done.
you mentioned earlier about the evaluation compass and how you might you see some faults with it or something, or you're not completely satisfied with it, or and I was kind of interested in that because I was wondering why. Because for example, when I use it, I've actually found it pretty useful using it for describing people and stuff and being able to see where people's levels of consciousness are, where their sort of like gravity is at, like what their sort of like mind state is. Like I feel like it's been really helpful for me at least. So I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, taken as a kind of rough outline, it's fine. It's just that I don't know. I guess I just want it to be a bit more robust, a bit more reliable, and I'm not sure about. I mean, I sometimes see how certain. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I would say that yeah, there's this tendency to easily confuse level 2 with like level 5, and I think that rather than referring to level 4 as skeptic consciousness, perhaps idea consciousness or information consciousness is a bit better. But also this idea of like if there is some way that you can make it so that you can have like where each level represents something positive that you can like achieve, I guess, to make it less hierarchical in a sense. Because I keep coming back to this idea of uh, of trying to see the positive in like bad things or what people might perceive as bad things as well, and that's serving a function. I'm wondering if there's some way to, I don't know, take some of that into account as well, because I can see how certain struggles people need to go through will like resemble the lowest level, but that does not necessarily mean that they are blind. So yeah, I'm not really prepared that well to discuss exactly what I see as the flaws in this model, but I don't know. Maybe I will end up leaving it as it is because it's as good as it can be. That's very possible.
Yeah,
it's just that I guess I personally have drifted away a little bit from looking at these levels when I look at things a little bit at least.
Also, like, I don't know if like perhaps maybe my ADD at play, but I don't know if I'm not sure if you have written a specific like potential paths through which you can transition from one level of consciousness to a higher one, or if you have to like if there is like, and I know there is no specific order, but maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean these levels are very simple in a way because in many ways there is you could even argue that there are only 5 levels. Like there is the pathological level, the lowest, and then there are the 3 levels that corresponds to the various types, and those are like you can look at them as equal because as soon as someone like awakens a bit and has they go straight to dissolution consciousness. So someone who is like a Morum type goes straight to 3. I don't think they go through 5 and 4 like that.
Right.
So
would you say it's related then to like something that happens, like some kind of life experience that then takes the individual from that stage or that level of consciousness all of a sudden to level 3 instead of like going through something like level 5 or level 4? Or
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Those levels, level 5, 6, and 4 are very somewhat specialized because those people who tends to get lost in ideas and information and statistics and things like that tends to be, well, that happens with everyone. I think that, yeah, I think idea consciousness, this idea of getting lost in conceptualizations perhaps fits because I look at it very much like I'm looking at the types because the types have a particular form of consciousness and awareness that has a certain trajectory, and then I figured that you would have to include that in levels. So it's like a kind of an attempt at a synthesis, which is sort of missing from spiral dynamics, that it doesn't talk about how that might correlate to types, each of these levels. I mean, I know that Bolelo has experimented with trying to not just do the 3 basic types, but also each of the 9 more primary types with each levels. But I think that I mean, I can see sort of how level 7 can it's like Exidium tends to be more common in that level, possibly, which seems, I don't know, perhaps problematic. But I guess, I mean, it could make sense as well. Why would there be certain people more prone to destructiveness? I mean, this idea of equality is difficult when you look at nature and you look at people having different attributes. So yeah, and I don't want to do too much like speculating or theorizing. I do like this scientific approach of statistics, or where you, like I've been trying to do with looking at certain comments that I've gotten, where you organize them and see if you can find certain patterns that recurs, and then you can start to get an idea where, because I like this idea that when, like you said, Christian, you said that you can see where people like are, and I guess I can too, but I would like to see even more, like so that like you can see certain statements or reactions that you can sort of fit in, and then I don't know, point out to people. I guess you can look at it as
Well, you
helping
can even
them, or just trying to make them see what they are doing if they are on a lower level. But the problem is that a lot of these things are very specific in a way that in these my descriptions are very general, and because of that I myself don't fully understand why people act the way they do. So I guess it's for me personally, I still have to make guesses, like perhaps the reason this person is acting this way is because of them being at this level, except there is something there that seems to point more towards a specific type. So you have to combine it with type psychology and things like that. And yeah.
Well, I also think of it like when I engage with people and stuff, when I keep these levels of consciousness in mind. Let's say like I want to, if I know that the person's at like level 4, I guess we could say information consciousness or idea consciousness, then I could probably have more discussions with them about different ideas and try to see if I can maybe gather information from them, or I can provide some new information to them or something. And then if someone's at like level 5 consciousness, then that's someone I can be more comfortable maybe being open with and like expressing myself, or doing some kind of interaction with them where it's more emotional, I guess. Whereas then with someone who's at like level 6, usually those are the people I have the most issues with, are people at like level 6 consciousness, because I wouldn't say that I'm a very practical person, and like I don't think in a very practical, pragmatic way. And I have a lot of conflicts with people that think in a more pragmatic and practical way. So then that's helpful for me, knowing that I understand that that's where I have faults, and maybe I could understand more people that are in that level of consciousness. Like, what is it that they see in me that they don't get about me, or that I don't get about them and stuff. Like it's just very helpful for giving me ways to approach people and interact with them and stuff. Just by giving me basic information like that, you know. And maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to bring up this idea because of their level of consciousness, or maybe even talk about this or express myself in this kind of way or something. You know, like it's a better way to, I think, interact with people and to have better interactions maybe, which then correlates down to types and all this stuff. So
Yeah, I would say that the main issues that I'm having is because of more like advanced stuff, where I want to apply to more detailed stuff. So I think it's fine to get certain points across to people when you're talking with people and when you're looking at things in general. I think it still works, but it's like when I look at the lowest level, it's so extreme that it's sometimes difficult to see examples of it. And then when you come to the level 4, 5, and 6 that correlates to types, it is almost more useful to look at individual types, like the 9 primary types, rather than the more general levels, in order to explain certain people's behavior. So they almost become a bit redundant when contrasted with biased psychology. And then
I see.
but I say that I really like the 3rd level. I think that is a very good one and very useful, like this entry into development proper by being disillusioned with the way things are, as a kind of summary of how the best way almost to approach timeless education and timelessness. This idea of you have to sort of let go of all assumptions, and in order to get there, it's a good idea it's useful if you yourself have experienced that you are disillusioned with things, and that
with my experience, it's been something like I've been trying to seek some kind of guidance or something like that, and like I've felt like not necessarily there wasn't a feeling that there's something wrong with the world, but more of that there was like a feeling that I'm kind of like lost or have no direction or something, and I feel like I need that. And it's like, where can I find that? And that's what led me to like spiritual seeking and stuff like that. And I felt like that was like level 3 sort of, and I got lucky into level 2, and then so on.
Yeah, so the levels are kind of good as a kind of a system of memorization. That's why I often say when people criticize systems like levels and types and all kinds of stuff, and there is it's legitimate to be a bit critical of that stuff if it becomes too, if people hang on to that stuff too much and their thinking and looking at things becomes too rigid through these systems. But as a kind of system of memorization, it's very useful because then you can easily remember these kinds of things. So yeah, so
Yeah,
I
that's
haven't
pretty much all the. That's the only question I had though, pretty much.
Yeah, so I haven't really made any modifications to it yet, and like I said, I might not do it because it's still useful as it is. It's just that
Maybe refine it.
my own personal ambition is that it would have been cool if it was even more useful or precise or could reveal something, could help me explain some of these things that I'm still not quite understanding about human psychology, I guess.
Dang, no, it's like I don't know how long you want the call to go on for, but that's just leading me to more questions now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm also
We
like
can at
getting
least stop the recording
tired.
and then we can continue talking by ourselves for a bit. So thank you. Hope the people who are watching this found it interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Hmm?